Why you lie and you cheat and you try to make a fool out of shit.
What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and today, people, today, I bring you tidings of great joy. Stasis has been nerfed. And then the people cheered, and they ate of the taco on its prescribed day of that, which is the day of the Tuesday, and only on the day of the Tuesday, as a reprieve from the dread of the rest of the week, but never on a Friday, and most certainly not on a Wednesday. And then they drank of the cheap beer and the Jose Bueno, and all was right. Jokes aside, in the most recent update to Destiny 2, Stasis received a nerf. Originally, I was going to talk about all the changes when they were first announced, but I figured I'd wait and play them first, given that they were literally releasing only a few days after their announcement. But because every video is somebody's first, I'm gonna go ahead and just speed through the changes with no commentary. But I just wanted to go ahead and make sure that everybody was on the same page before we really start talking about the effect these changes have had on PvP. So without further ado, timestamps on the screen now, and let's dive in. General Stasis, Stasis Freeze. Reduce the duration of all non-super freezes versus players to 1.35 seconds. Note, this freeze is too short to break out of, so breaking out is now only possible when frozen by a super. Reduce special weapon, heavy weapon, and light ability bonus damage versus frozen players from plus 50% to plus 5%. Stasis Slow no longer reduces weapon accuracy, now increases weapon flinch when under fire, no longer suppresses class abilities and air moves, e.g. Icarus Dash. Known issue, the Stormcaller's Ionic Blink is still suppressed when slowed. We plan to address this in a future release. Reduce movement speed penalty while slowed by 20%. Whispers of Hydron Fragment. No longer increases weapon damage after freezing, now increases weapon stability, weapon aim assist, mobility, resilience, and recovery after freezing. Whisper of Rhyme Fragment no longer provides overshield while in super. Cold Snap Grenade. Seeker no longer tracks target after initial acquisition. Increased arming duration before Seeker spawns from 0.3 seconds to 0.8 seconds. Reduce detonation radius versus player from 3 meters to 1.5 meters. Now bounces off walls and detonates on the ground. Titan Behemoth, Shiver Strike. Reduce flight speed and distance. Reduce knockback versus players. Remove slow detonation on player impact. Cryoclasm now requires the Titan to sprint for 1.25 seconds before activation when not in super. Removed cooldown, Howl of the Storm. Reduced angle of initial freeze/damage cone. Reduced crystal creation freezing radius. Slowed down sequence of crystal formation to allow victims more opportunity to escape. Now spawns small crystal on wall if performed into walls. Glacial Quake. Reduced heavy slam vertical freeze range versus players. Reduced damage resistance from 50% to 47%. Revenant Hunter. Whirling Blade. Reduced slow duration versus players from 2.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Reduce Whisper of Durance's slow duration extension versus players from 2 seconds to 0.5 seconds. Reduce damage versus players from 65 to 45. After one bounce, reduce further to 30. Reduce projectile speed by 10%. Reduce tracking after bouncing off a wall. Winter Shroud. Reduce slow duration versus player from 2.5 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Reduce Whisper of Durance's slow duration extension versus players from 2 seconds to 0.5 seconds. Touch of Winter. Cold Snap Seekers no longer have increased movement speed or travel distance. Cold Snap Seekers now spawn a small stasis crystal on detonation. Warlock Shadebinder, Penumbral Blast. Reduced tracking and proximity detonation size and tracking versus player. Reduce freezing radius versus players when impacting on the environment from 2.7 meters to 1.5 meters. Ice Flare Bolts. Seekers now only chain once when spawning from a player's shatter. Winter's Wrath, freezing projectile tracking strength now ramps down to 0 after 2 seconds of flight. So yeah, that's some pretty hefty nerfs on paper, But how does PvP play with these changes? Well, like I've said before, and I will say again here, Destiny PvP is the junk food of gaming. It's not competitive. The best we can ever hope for is to kinda sorta just sand down the edges so that people don't regularly feel like they're being robbed. The oppressive ability that Stasis had to remove the player's ability to play and only watch if they die was aggravating. Likely to all but those who abused it. And even then, I'm sure there's people who use Stasis that dislike Stasis because they had to use it. I also want to point out that nerfing Stasis only alleviates PvP's issues. It's not some magic bullet that's suddenly going to make Destiny 2 PvP a competitive esport. Not because it's impossible to balance Destiny in such a way, but because Bungie doesn't want to or doesn't know how to, regardless of the lip service they pay every now and then. I say this because after the nerfs to Stasis, while people are getting acquainted with the new sandbox, the discussion of Stasis has lessened, while the conversation about other gameplay balance issues like bastions, shotguns, dead man's tail, 120 hand cannons, ability usage, and much more have taken center stage, which inevitably has people saying PvP players are never happy. When the reality is, people have been talking about these issues for longer than Stasis has been around. Stasis merely took center stage for far longer than it should have. All of this is to say that if you thought the nerf to Stasis was going to be the magic bullet that fixed PvP, it's not. PvP, like always, still has issues. In my time playing it since the nerf, it's been less aggravating. The problem is, I don't know if this is because people have it in their heads that Stasis is dead, so they're not using it, even if Stasis is still largely better than most light subclasses, except for maybe Top Tree Dawnblade. You still have a lot of customizability with Stasis, you can still freeze people, and Stasis has the one-up on every subclass with a feature that most people seem to never talk about. The bonus stats that you get just because you're using Stasis. So I don't know if Stasis is seeing a drop-off in usage because people think it's dead, or if it's actually dead. Probably somewhere in between. But this is only one piece of the puzzle, as there's also some light subclass changes coming down the line as well. So who knows how that'll all balance out. We also can't forget that at the beginning of next year in February, we'll have new subclasses added to the sandbox as well. All we can hope is that Bungie takes a lesson from Stasis when releasing these new subclasses. All in all, I'm certainly enjoying PvP a lot more now than I was. Now all we need is some new Crucible maps. Please? But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to like, but only if you did. Subscribe for more. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you're feeling particularly generous. But above all else, stay frosty.